afternoon, friends. Stephen Benoon here with Israeli News Live, and today we're joined on video here on Zoom here with Rachel Wilson. And Rachel, I ran across a video that she did on TikTok, a video I'll post in the description for you here below, and it really made me do some serious thinking. I mean, I've been in homeschool most of my life with my kids and stuff, but I've also have a son who is a teacher, as well as my daughter-in-law are both teachers, and they think a lot outside the box. But this video here made me start asking a lot of questions, even from them, and they confirmed a lot of what Rachel is saying to be very true. And we're talking about a video that Rachel did. She's only been doing TikTok for about a month, but this video on TikTok has already reached 448,000 views, and I happened to just catch it one day. And it's all about what's happening to your kids in the school system. Rachel, thank you for joining me and share a little bit about yourself with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So I previously was a former teacher. I taught third grade for 4 years, and then I was teaching. Well, really, I started to become burned out due to all the standardized testing. So I decided to try out kindergarten. I imagined it being focused on crafts and playtime, and I was in for a very rude awakening. Um, Realizing how much testing is even at the pre-K and kindergarten level. And then I ended up resigning mid-year for multiple reasons. I started to see the dehumanization in public education for both students and teachers. And I initially resigned due to my mental health. I felt like this is not right. I didn't feel like I was contributing to the lives of children. I felt like I was doing the opposite by feeling forced by my district to use scripted curriculum, digital apps, and ed tech platforms. And then I'm working on my PhD in education and community leadership. And my dissertation topic is on the dehumanization of education. So when I started researching the history of public education, which I should know that, having this much, time and years in schooling, and I really didn't know what the education or the history of education was. When I started researching that, it just led me to this reality of kind of realizing that education was never even really built for children or for improving children's lives. And that led me down to then questioning the technology that we were using. And I don't know how much further you want me to talk on that, but that's a
We're
little
gonna
bit about
we're
me.
gonna probably we'll get into a lot of this information here. Now, what's interesting though, so your 5 years in teaching was at the same school. You just spent several years in third grade and then went to the kindergarten level when you switched over to that. So that's correct. Did I understand that right?
Yes, correct. Originally, I was hired at a different school, but in the same district my first year. And this is something that often happens to teachers due to uh, class sizes. Another campus needed another teacher. And so 2 weeks in, after I had my own classroom and was teaching second grade, I actually had to shift to a new school teaching third grade. So technically two schools, but really I was at one school for the majority for all of it.
I want to one thing I want to share as I think about this and as I've been watching, especially when I just listening to your video, it's it's not a long video, but it's just jaw-dropping. I'll be 61 in October. So, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in grade school, but the education system has changed so dramatically over the years since I was in school. Not only the curriculum is tougher than what it used to be, uh, you know, even like when I was in high school, we only had to have 2 years of math, for example, and you only had to have no higher than general math. And I was very good at math, but that's beside the point. And the other thing is that, I had a little brother that was 11 years younger than I am. When he went through, it was already changing drastically. And by then, even the discipline issues in school had already dramatically changed. Whereas when I was in school and everything, the teacher could still paddle you. In fact, when I was in school, the teacher would send you to the principal to get paddled. But even in middle school, your teacher could paddle you if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
misbehaved, right? Now that's gone out the door completely, but that's a different situation. We're not even looking at that. As you called it in your video, you called it data mining. And I'm like, my gosh, what has education become now? And you mentioned that this was, I'm assuming that when you left, it's because of what you were seeing in the school system is what was challenging you mentally with it was the system itself. Am I correct in that?
Yes, to an extent. So absolutely, as far as I having to use the scripted curriculum, um, really, I'll tell you kind of how I found this out because I didn't entirely understand the data mining situation until about a month ago when I decided to initially post. But basically, what was happening was my school district was required to use a curriculum from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. It's pretty well-known curriculum for K through 12. And I was having a lot of issues with it being developmentally appropriate for kindergartners. And every time I asked questions, um, I was met with a lot of resistance. I was told these companies have, many professionals that have their PhD in education. They know what they're doing. And I felt like I didn't have any autonomy or freedom to teach what I have been taught and what I know is best for my students. So that is really where it started. Now, HMH, which is what it is called, they own a online reading program called Amplify, and what was interesting was that when I started teaching in 2019, that was the first year that we had adopted this curriculum. And then, as we all know, 2020, so my first year of teaching was when COVID hit. And I just thought it was very interesting and convenient that when COVID hit, we had adopted that year a curriculum that had us able to perfectly transition to online learning. So that always just, I thought it was odd, but just thought, okay, I guess it's just, good timing. And then I just had a lot of issues with this curriculum. And then fast forward to, and that was during when I was teaching third grade. Fast forward to when I was teaching kindergarten. I, oh,
If I
sorry, were
can
you going to say
stop
something?
you just for a minute,
Yeah,
let's back. That really is something interesting as well. So in 2019, or we'll go back up to 2020, they were able to fast track into online learning as if it was nothing, almost as if I understand right, they knew something was coming, so they were already prepared to do that. Did I get that right?
that is how I felt. I can't confirm that, 100%.
Okay.
But I look back at that. And also when I began following the money trail, it was very interesting as far as just certain investors or people starting to, um, take an interest in certain educational tech platforms right before. So I can't confirm anything as far as their true intentions, but I just thought, wow, how convenient that the first time this has ever happened, we're prepared for it. So I thought that was very weird.
Right. And that is interesting, like you said, when you follow the money, because and I know with my channel being on YouTube, they got so much restrictions when it goes into certain subjects that it's like, taboo to even mention it. So I won't go into calling those names on that. But I will say this though, it's also like, for example, whether it was gloves or any other types of paraphernalia that is used in that particular environment. the wealthy people had already invested. They had already bought stocks, things like that. They basically they knew something was coming, and and how does this work though when you mention this data mining of these kids? It's like I remember in your video you're talking about, and I'll probably edit a clip of your video into this as we're speaking about this now, but you talk about how that the kids when they come in from like I don't remember how, I'll just have you tell it, but it's like from one point to the next, everything is being recorded what they're doing.
Yes, yeah. So kind of what I was saying was this curriculum I was having so many issues with. And when I was told, the people that created this, they have their PhD in education, they know what's best for students. So I began to look into this company. And what I found was that they had actually already sold their company for over $2 billion to a private equity firm. And so I'm thinking that's very interesting. Why is a private equity firm in control of the curriculum that I'm being forced to use and that the students are having to learn from? And then I saw that the company Veritas Capital, which is the one that now owns HMH, they also own Cambium online platform. I don't know the full name, but Cambium, which was the software that students at my school district took the STAR test off of. So I'm like, wow, okay, so they also own the platform and now all students take the STAR test online, which is the Texas standardized assessment. And then I saw that they also own the math assessments that we're giving to students starting in kindergarten. And so I just kept questioning, what does a private equity firm, what do they want to do with our curricula? And what was interesting to me was that how much we were being told to use it. Like we had to use their online platforms. We had to use it at least like a minimum of an hour a week, even in kindergarten. And so that's kind of what started this was just me realizing, why do these people care about education curriculum? And then I begin to realize that actually this is a $1 billion industry, and it's not about children learning. It is about profit. It is about making companies and people rich. And then as far as data mining goes, I started to look into what I call digital surveillance and this idea that, well, it's not an idea. You can look up articles that there are certain softwares and certain programs that have already had um, leaks, data privacy issues, but their students' digital profiles, their keystrokes, their eye movement, their how quickly they read on. Also, not to mention, um, you know, right before COVID, the Gates Foundation had given out lots of Chromebooks to schools and gifted these. And 2020 was when we started getting one-to-one devices, so then now every child has their own device. At my school, kindergarten through second grade has an iPad, and third and up have their own Chromebook. So it's assigned to them. It follows them all the way through school. And then through these Chromebooks, they have their own Google account. They have their own email address. And then these devices, have cameras, they have recording audio, and then they're using apps and different ed tech tools for, educational learning. And I just started to think about, wait a minute, what about the data privacy? Like that's a topic that we talk about, that I think about with my own phone. And I started thinking about how parents don't even know what apps we use. I started researching, trying to see exactly, is this what I think it is? And it is. What was happening was basically schools are able to sign on behalf of parents, using what's called in loco parentis, and they're able to bypass there's loopholes within FERPA, which is similar to HIPAA in the medical world, except for FERPA is, privacy in the education world. And there is loopholes that school districts can sign on behalf of parents, and act as their, guardian or their parent. And so they're signing away to ed tech companies. And I believe that teachers do not know this. Districts don't realize the extent of this. I wouldn't think that they do. They just see, oh, okay, all the school districts are doing this. This is gonna streamline everything. Perfect. But what I'm realizing is data is being sold. And that's kind of where this data mining comes from, is that we're seeing that already with algorithms and, purchases and all of these things online where they're taking our data, they're selling them to advertisers. And then
Yeah.
I start to have an issue with it because some people had asked, well, they've been doing this, like they're doing this to your phone right now. But children are known historically as the most exploited group, and they do not have consent. They do not understand this at all. It normalizes the idea of constant surveillance from a very young age. Starting in
Yes.
pre-K, we're telling children that it is normal to be watched and under surveillance at all times. Um, and it starts to get very concerning and very scary when we begin losing privacy.
Right.
And
Right.
this is something we're seeing happening very quickly with AI, and the current legal system, the current laws that are in place to protect children, they aren't able to keep up with how fast AI and technology is moving. So there's these loopholes that make it legal. So you can't, it's not illegal for these schools to be using these digital platforms. And then we don't know, are schools really sitting there and reading all of the fine print as far as who owns the data, where the data is going, whether or not people can leak or hack into these data systems, and then what are they doing with the data? There's not to mention, it's not just, I had someone that asked, what do they care about my child's math scores? And it goes so much deeper than that.
It is
There is a,
deeper, I think. Yeah. Let
yeah,
me ask you this. All
yeah,
right.
sorry, I could go forever.
No, it's great. I wanted you to be able to go as far on this far already because it's making me think of a lot of things. I did an interview with a man named Craig LaForest recently, and I interviewed him because I saw him in an interview with Dr. Robert Duncan. Dr. Robert Duncan was with the CIA and the DARPA program, and he was one of the gentlemen that helped develop the mind control technology, or the what they call voice of God, or let's see, the voice to skull technology, where they use this type programming for weapons and war and things like that. But with that being stated, one of the things that was really brought to the forefront is how that they are using the technology through, like you said, these tablets. They're watching you. And according to Dr. Duncan, he says they're able to take and they're able to map the brain, and they're planning on using a lot of this type of mapping as for eventually pre-crime in the future. They want to be able to use this for pre-crime to determine what is that person going to do. So my question is, when I'm beginning to hear things like this, could they be, and it's scary already to think that the school system has the access, kind of like you use that, I forget the word you called it, but it's like the HIPAA program, but the school gets access to this on your kids. Um, and let's see, I made myself a couple of notes. Let me see where I can find, um, to where they get control of this, and they're able to literally every when you can take and monitor a child from a very young age, especially kindergarten on up, they're getting all that data is being mined from that child. That literally, according to Dr. Duncan, helps them to build a profile of how that person thinks. Not only can it be sold to advertisers for the future, or even for them for advertisement on their iPads or whatever, little commercial pops up for something that the child might like. But then again, I think about Palantir as well, another company. I'm not sure if you're familiar
Yes.
with Palantir, right?
Yes.
And Palantir is already, Donald Trump just recently employed them. And I mean, this company here is using AI to literally track people, where they go, what they're doing. And then also, and I'm going to drop it with this and put it back in your court here in a second here. Apple even developed an earbud. You know how they have the little wireless earphones there? They developed it to where the sensories, according to the patent technology, is able to do an EEG of your brain while it's in your ear. And like you mentioned in your video, parents, do they even know that their children are being done this way? So, with some of this thoughts, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. When you mentioned that, I actually had taken a few notes and I had written this earlier. I put, it is concerning to me when tech billionaires are not only funding our education and our ed tech learning platforms, but also simultaneously investing in AI surveillance, predictive policing, and biotech. That is concerning to me. And the fact that this is almost being trialed on children. And so I have a huge issue with this, and it doesn't sit right with me. It just, yeah, there's something that doesn't sit right with me, that the same people that are interested in merging humans with technology and profiling using AI algorithms also have access to our children's data.
Yes, even with the popular AI platform ChatGPT, one of the things that I really have been concerned about is that, especially even with children that are maybe engaging with a platform such as this, how much of that information is being stored or being used, just like what you said about the programs that the schools are using. This information is being stored. It's being shared. Who's it being shared with? Is there you know they're taking advantage of AI technology, and knowing that at this point there are no laws, there are no safeguards. The exploitation of children in this case here is could really be on a very high scale, and no one's paying attention to it.
Yes,
With,
yes.
with that, and I want you to speak on that as well. But one thing I did want to ask you though, the school system that you worked with, were you in more of a rural setting, or are you in an inner city, or what type of setting were you in your teaching?
Um, yeah, sorry, I'm like, don't want to go too, into detail, but definitely outside of a major city. And I did work at a Title I school, so we did not have as many resources or funds. So, a lot of packed classrooms and not a lot of help and high special ed population and a lot of sometimes behavioral needs. So that was my experience.
And that was something that I was asked about too, if I would check with you on that. And just like you said, the funding is always short in situations like that, which definitely makes it very difficult, to deal with those types of settings there. Uh, so now you learn this as you've been working on your PhD, and as you said, that's what really brought a lot of this information to light. Um, so, the, you know, are you planning? Have you thought about? I know maybe it's a little bit premature to ask this right now, but have you thought about doing your thesis on this very type of subject?
I am currently thinking about it. Originally, my topic was going to be on the dehumanization of educators and students in the public education system, and I really wanted to start out with my literature review, kind of going through the history of education and how our education system was originally modeled after modern day Germany. It was simultaneously built during the Industrial Revolution, and with the intention of creating, obedient workers, not critical, creative thinkers. And then it's just crazy because that has led me down to looking into standardized testing and seeing where, that actually this idea of tracking and sorting students isn't new, because it goes all the way back to um, the Cold War. It goes back to standardized testing, or not standard, yeah, standardized testing. Goes back to being rooted in eugenics and trying to sort children and the people that were involved in creating the original SAT. Uh, it's very interesting. The same guy that was the president of Harvard, who was helping to create this, he was also simultaneously helping create nuclear weapons. So it's just really interesting the more you dig deeper into who all has a part in creating and profiting off of and investing in education. It's just really wild. Did I
Yes.
answer your question? I can't even remember what you
Yes, you
originally
did very
asked me.
well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Some general questions for you I wanted to ask too is like, for example, the in loco parentis, uh, which a lot of people may not even be familiar with that. That's meaning basically the schools act as a parent when when the kids are at the school, and it is a real big issue there. And so the thought is FERPA, FERPA, for
Hmm.
those that may not know, should protect the privacy. And but the thing is that being bypassed by the tech companies, and are the tech companies actually considered like the school staff? So they maybe are
Yes.
considered the in loco parentis, if I got that correct in saying that.
Yes, correct. So the in loco parentis, it originally is derived from a Latin term, and medical professionals are able to use that as well, signing on behalf of patients. And in education, FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Protection Act, it is supposed to protect children records. However, school districts can sign on behalf of the parent, and because it is signed as an education platform, then the owners of these education, ed tech tools and companies become like the parent. They become, or not like the parent, sorry, like the educator. So legally, they are able to have access just like a teacher could have access to the child's private records. Now these billionaire companies can have access. And I just don't believe school districts understand that when they're signing off on these contracts. Um, and I know teachers don't
Parents
understand that either.
definitely don't understand
Parents
that's what's
definitely
going
don't.
on
Parents don't
either.
even know what apps are being used. And as a teacher, I think it's just one of those things you don't think about. And there's no say on, well, that's just not something we talk about as far as digital privacy or and then not to mention, like, we used to have a computer teacher. Funds have cut that, so we no longer have a computer teacher. So there's not anyone. It's up to the classroom teacher to educate students on digital privacy.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. When it comes to tracking the emotional state of the students, and I think that's something that you alluded to as well
Hmm.
in your video there, that these tech companies have that ability to be able to track that. And things such as searching for suicide information, things like that. And granted, if they've already handed all these kids these little devices, they're tracking them in that way there. What is really supposed to be the purpose for this? I mean, are they trying to take the place of the parents, or is this again something similar to that of pre-crime type of initiative starting off in a very early stage? I mean, what do you think about those type things there?
Absolutely. I think it is originally set up to educators and parents that this is all in the name of safety and protection for, we have your student's best interest in mind. But like, as a parent, I was telling my sister about this, and she homeschools, and she was like, "Wait, y'all did that?" Like, yes, we were forced. three times a year to fill out surveys, behavioral surveys on our students. And this, I never talked to parents about this. This information wasn't given to parents, and we had to rate each child on how safe, respectful, and responsible they are in every single category. And we're just told as teachers, um, you know, you already have a million things going on. You don't have time to question or think someone might have bad intentions. And you're told, okay, fill out this behavior report so we can track, student data to make sure students are doing good. And so you sit down and you fill out a survey on every single student's behavior, and parents do not know that. And then, not to mention, I was looking into a specific program called Go Guardian, which actually gives you the access. Like, as the teacher, I could open up my laptop and it would show me the screen of every single student in my class. And I just went onto YouTube and was listening to someone that works for their company talk through their education tools, and they just added the ability to send out a emotional social skill test at any point where students can tell you how they're feeling. They can check in. And I just kept thinking, why the teacher is there in person. And so why are we now telling students to open up their Chromebooks and type and send to the teacher how they're feeling? And again, we don't know who has access to this and where it's going. And it's becoming very concerning. I don't think people understand how deep it goes.
Can certainly see that. And, going back to Dr. Robert Duncan, when, of course, he passed away last year, and he's a young guy, he's in his 50s.
Mhm.
So I kind of think that was a little bit odd. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, one of the things that he brought up as well is that the voice to skull technology has been used on students. And he mentioned in one of his lectures there that they monitor and they watch how young people, what they're searching, what they're doing online. And in essence, what's happening is they have put at the hands of every student now that ability and to be able to track them, like you said, that with using that terminology of data mining. But he said in this case here, he said we would track them to see the emotional states and things like that. So undoubtedly, the government's getting a hold of some of this information as well. And if they saw someone that leaned towards that type of ideology, they would think, oh gosh, guess what? Maybe we could use this guy, and I was being told years ago that, that type of information was being placed in these kids' head. They would, because like in this one kid, I don't want to go into this too much because I don't want to put you in a predicament with saying this either, but they had one kid that he was talking about, he was hearing voices in his head and there was debate as to whether or not did he really commit the crime. I'll just say it like that there. Uh, that was a red flag for me from the very beginning when I heard that because I knew about that technology. And then when you hear things like this, could this become a sinister plot? I mean, who really does have uh, access to this type of information? Which going back, you said you knew who Palantir was. Are you aware whether or not Palantir has access to the information that they're collecting from these kids?
That is a great question. I actually did try to research, and I couldn't find any sources directly linking. That's not to say they don't have access to it, or that, just like how the HMH company sold out to, a private equity firm, it's not to say that those digital profiles, like how you mentioned, they don't disappear, they stay with them, that these could easily get sold to other people. So it's concerning.
Yeah, I mean, because let's face it. Yeah, it could be something maybe as simple as, well, we learned enough about the emotions of the kids and everything and how they're thinking and stuff that we can get them to buy a certain pair of shoes and they'll sell it to Amazon or some company like that there, so they can kind of throw ads that way. But it could also go very sinister. Or the next thing you know, they're tracking the emotional states of these kids and everything in the name of Well, we're trying to make sure the kid is not on the edge and going to cause problems at the school. And a lot of people would probably think, yeah, that only makes sense and everything. But how much of invasion of privacy? I remember when I was a kid in school, we had citizenship reports. If we were, you had an A to an F, just like in your grade. If you got a C in my parents' mind, you needed to be okay, we're going to have a serious conversation about your conduct in school. So the parents took care of the problem if a teacher felt like there was a problem. But nowadays it's really becoming very alarming from what you have shared with us already today. And can you just share with us, Rachel, what you feel like parents ought to be thinking about as they're seeing these things happening, or what they might should question? That'd be another way to put it. I will say this, throw this in there as well. My uncle, he was a professor in criminology, and he's retired now. But he said to my wife one day, who came from a former Czechoslovakia, and he said to her, he said he watched communism creeping into the educational system, and he said, but totally unchallenged. No one was paying attention. And so I'm wondering, is this like a form of that we're seeing with all these? Because you mentioned going back even into Germany, which I thought was very interesting. Some of the things that you've uncovered in that as well. You know, what in the world is going on in our school system?
Yeah, and that's what is so concerning is that the more research I do, the more I realize it was created, um, with these same intentions of controlling children and having this kind of, well, not to mention, there's the school to prison pipeline, and then school to workforce pipeline, and now we're adding in a whole new element from tracking them digitally, their behavior, how they react when they're frustrated. I mean, there are programs like that one I was telling you about that shows their whole desktop computer. The person talking on behalf of their platform had to make a disclaimer to say, we suggest that you only watch their computer screens when they're in your class, but basically you have the ability to watch their screen at any point. And so the people that own and built these softwares or these programs, they also have access to this. And you think about children anywhere from 4 years old all the way to 18 years old, and they are assigned devices. Sometimes, that's why I think it's so interesting that companies gave these out for free. Sometimes I question when things are free, why? And to
Right.
see this really is, I think this goes a lot deeper than people think and people understand. And we're already seeing, this move towards digital currency and surveillance in our everyday life. And when we now are tracking students behaviorally, socially, physically, emotionally, spiritually from the time they are 4 years old, we're just having them walk into a system where we say surveillance is normal, your privacy is not your right, education is not your right, and I cannot sit back and not do anything about that. So children's data and privacy should never be the currency for billionaire companies, or it's crazy.
Wow, I couldn't agree more with you. And even as I watch across the nation too, the clampdown on universities as well, freedom of speech is being taken away, regardless of what people may view on the protest or whatever that may be going on, or different type protest over the years. It's just interesting that more and more, it's almost as if we're being told what we're to believe, how we're to believe it, how we're to accept it, and how we should be molded into a certain social and cultural way. And
100%.
I got one of the statements that was sent to me. that basically schools are just churning out workers. And this is a common belief among a lot of teachers because of the high pressure placed on state testing. And we have to stamp information. This was from a teacher into students' minds, which is 100% like training workers. You could take this further by asking, if school uniforms fits kids into boxes. Uh,
Mm.
and that's so true. And, it's just it's so much different. And it's just strange how things have so rapidly changed over the years, from when I went to school compared to what school is like now. And can't help but wonder where it's going. Rachel, if you would, and I want to just, I'll real quick say this before we get to the end here. Rachel Wilson, or excuse me, Rach Wilson 11. If you do that at TikTok at Rach Wilson 11. Also, Rachel is also on Instagram as well under the same name, Rach Wilson 11. And she'll be sending me her YouTube channel link where she will be uploading some of these videos that she's done here in the past month. And we'll put all three of those in the description for you so you could follow her on all three platforms. I think her information is pertinent. It's informative. It's important. I have five grandkids. Well, I have one granddaughter. Thank God for my son-in-law for that. But otherwise, all boys. So, and I love them. But seriously, and of course, they're all the way from seniors down to just starting school. And so these things concern me greatly, as it should anyone. And uh, and I really want to thank you, Rachel, too, for having the courage to speak out the way you have. You have helped a lot of people to at least begin to question this, to challenge this. Other than, I mean, I got in touch with you through your TikTok, so I suppose that would be the safest way to contact you. I know, not everybody wants to give out information, and I certainly wouldn't want you to do that either, unless that's something you wanted to do for people to contact you, because there's all kinds of nuts in the world as well. But
Right.
just in your closing, can you share with me just some of your thoughts that you would have?
Yeah, and I actually just realized you had asked me, as far as what I would tell parents, or what they can do from here on out. I created a Google document that has pre-filled out opt-out letters if parents who have students in the public education system. I don't personally know how schools or how school districts will react, but I did create letters where you can request under FERPA what data is being shared with what companies. And then I also added in different websites that help you to be able to copy and paste data privacy. I just went blank. Their privacy policies, and you can just paste it in, and it will go through and automatically kind of tell you what looks kind of vague or suspicious or what looks safe. So I added a couple different tools, and I would say to just remember you are the parent and you have a right to know what is going on in your child's classroom, what they're learning, who is providing this information, because to be honest, I guarantee more teachers than would like to admit don't agree with the curriculum being taught, and they are, forced to use this scripted curriculum. And it's really this top-down situation where, at least speaking on my behalf, I didn't have the autonomy to be able to choose what apps my students were using or what curriculum I was teaching them. So I would just say ask questions. Do not be afraid to demand transparency, and to just not forget the importance in human connection with teaching children, and not to trade that in for digital convenience.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Rachel Wilson, amazing young lady. And I'm sure you, like myself, you will probably be listening to a lot of her TikTok videos there. So It is very important information, and I think it'd be good for you guys to be proactive as well. Stephen Benoon with Israeli News Live. Thank you guys for listening, and be sure to subscribe to her TikTok, her Instagram, and of course her YouTube channel because she will be growing that as well. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much.